Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu salam rasulullah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our Children After Divorce, Are Our Kids the Collateral Damage discussion today. I'm here with Raisa Giwala, who is about to share this out to her networks, because hopefully mine, it's sharing out to mine automatically. If you are joining the recording or joining us live now, please share this with as many people as possible, because this is such an important topic. So please share this to anybody you think could benefit, who may be trying to, parent children through or after divorce. Really important topic. So the reason I am talking to Raisa today, and Jazakallah khair Raisa for taking time out of your day to do this with me, is because it is such an important topic that we are both very passionate about. We both have been through divorce. We both have been very passionate about learning about supporting our children through that. In fact, that's how I first met Raisa many years ago when she joined Peaceful Parenting, because she wanted to understand how she could support her children well through divorce. So divorce for children, even if it's a really amicable divorce, is hard. I am a child of an amicable divorce. My parents were very good at not showing what was going on behind the scenes, and yet I know as an adult the effects that had on me. So are our children being a part of collateral damage, through that divorce process? This is what we're going to discuss today, and I'm really excited to discuss it with Raisa, because she has made it her mission to help teach sisters how to do this, how they can really powerfully parent their children through divorce so that they don't end up collateral damage, insha'Allah. So welcome, Raisa. I'm so excited to be talking to you about this today.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much, Catherine, for getting together with me to share this. It's so important in what's happening in our future, what's happening in our present. Our children are the future, and how they develop and the experiences they go through will impact the choices they make and who they become as adults. And we have such a great role in that. And, one thing I really want to point out is that a lot of times people think that, okay, well, I have to stay married at all costs, regardless of what is going on in my marriage, whether it's abusive or whether it's harmful for you or the children. And because that's what's good for the children. And, it's really, I'm a firm believer that it's not about whether the parents stay married or they're not married, but it's two things, really. Is there conflict? Are the children caught in the crossfire of the conflict between mom and dad, whether they're in a married relationship in a one single home, or whether they're in divorced in two separate homes? Are the children caught in the conflict? So it's keeping them out of the conflict, because the conflict is what causes hurt and trauma for children. And the second thing is, are they able to unconditionally have a meaningful relationship with both parents? Meaning that there's no stuck in the middle again, feeling torn, having to choose sides, or having to not express or show the love and the attachment to one parent because the other parent can't handle that what it invokes within them, because they're feeling insecure of their own relationship with their child. So those are the two big things, the overarching things in my message really is, okay, you're divorced. Things didn't work out. There's been an end of a marriage. There's been hurt and trauma and pain and disappointment and all the things that come with grief, which comes from the loss of your relationship. So how are we going to deal with that, and how are we going to minimize the negative effects that you hear about from divorce to the children? And those are the two things, is not letting them get caught in your conflicts as the adults, as the parents. And number two is making sure they still have healthy, meaningful relationships with each parent, regardless of, what type of drama or conflict is going on between you and your ex.
And that really applies whether you're married or not married, actually, doesn't it? Because if children are caught in the middle of conflict, even when parents are married, there's just as much chaos going on in their lives as if the parents are separated. So one of the things that's really important to understand is how our language that we are using when we're communicating with our children is affecting their relationship with the other parent. So if we're derogatory or putting down the other parent, or blaming the other parent, that is not of benefit to anybody. I mean, it's not helping us because we're not able to detach from the past, but it's definitely not helping our children because it doesn't make it safe for them to be able to discuss what's going on for them, because they feel that it's not okay to talk about things that they're struggling with or feeling about the other parent or about the situation.
Yeah, so true. I'm glad you brought that point up because I just had a live yesterday with a friend of mine who was a child of divorce, and she talked about exactly that. When a parent says, "Oh, when you do that, you're just like your dad," and that hurts the child because you're bringing up a negative trait or quality that you didn't like in the parent, and you're attaching the child to that. So all the negativity or the harshness or, that you have towards the parent, it comes out onto the child, and the child feels, as she said yesterday, not good enough, or something's wrong with her, or not good enough to be loved or accepted as is. And that really affects the development and the self-esteem of a child as they're growing and developing and getting a sense of themselves. Because a child is half mom and half dad. So that's their foundation, that Allah has decided who is going to be their mother and who is going to be their father. In all of His wisdom, we don't get to decide that. We get to decide who we're going to be married to or not, but we don't get to decide who our child's parent is chosen, because that's chosen by Allah. So you're right. Language is very important. How we interact, what we say to our children, and becoming conscious of that. Because sometimes, I know it's happened to me as well, you say things because you're just reacting in the moment, and then you don't realize it, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Or maybe the child, shuts down and doesn't want to talk, or becomes defiant, or things that you see in behaviors with children, which is really indicating how they're handling the divorce or the split, or the new routines that are coming out of a divorce, is through their behavior. So that's a really, really good point, Catherine. Thank you for bringing that up.
It also leads me to why we feel it's necessary to speak like that. And especially because in my case, their dad was saying a lot of lies about me, and it felt like I had to counter those lies, that I had to justify, that I had to get caught up in that whole story, when the reality is that we have to understand and remember that our children are going to love us anyway, and it's not about competing for their love or their attention, that we're more likely to actually maintain that loving relationship with our children if we don't buy into that competition, and that we have the confidence in ourselves and our relationship with our children to just focus on nurturing that and not worrying about what he says. Say whatever he likes, he can't ruin that relationship if we're showing up in that relationship 100% for our kids. But when we get into the story and when we get into that competition with him, we are damaging our relationship with our children. We are not protecting it or saving it like we think we are. Yeah,
so true. And I have a lot of experience with this because that was one of my greatest insights. I didn't have a very high conflict marriage, I guess you could say, because I was in a very codependent relationship, and that's who I was. So it was very easy to control and manipulate me, and I didn't even realize it. And so after I got divorced, it's of course, we don't make the same decisions. I look out for myself and my best interests, and so does he, and we both look out for the children. So when I don't go along or agree with everything, it got really messy, and our kids got stuck in the middle. And so one of the greatest insights I had was that because it was turning into a big, huge fight. And between me and the ex, and then the kids were getting stuck in the middle, because that's how I would. Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for him, but what I'm talking about myself is that's how I was showing up with the kids. That if I was angry or upset about a disagreement or a conflict that we had, in my mind, I would have that in my mind when I was talking to them. So I would come from that type of a space and that type of an energy, and be harsh with them or unfair, and they didn't understand why, and that caused more of a wedge between me and my children, rather than in my mind I felt justified. Yeah. But this wasn't about him. So I had to learn that I cannot bring him into my interactions with my kids and keep him separate and me to deal with that. And with my children, it's just us. Even when children are being manipulated by the other parent to do or to behave how that other parent expects them to be in your presence or with you or in your home, it can get really messy, because they can, they can do things that trigger you to think, oh, they're under the control and manipulation of their father, and that's why they're behaving like this. So then you lash back as you would to him. Mm-hmm. But you're dealing with your children, and they're just caught with our emotions being dumped onto them. And that was one of the things that my friend talked about too, being a child of divorce, is how important it is for parents to have a safe space to take care of their own mental health and well-being, dealing with their own issues with the end of their marriage or with their ex-spouse, rather than dumping it on our children, because it hurts them at the end of the day, and it drives a wedge between you and the kids.
And at the end of the day, what's the most important thing is our relationship with our children. We have no power or control about their relationship with their father, and we can want it any which way we want, but it's kind of not our business anymore. It stopped being our business once the divorce was decreed, and our job is, when we have the kids, and to focus 100% on that. And if we really put our energy into that, we would realize that that's enough, that we don't need more than that, because kids, they need a lot from us. Before we go on, I'd just like to say wa alaikum assalam to Daniela and Estella, who have said salam to us in the comments. Sisters, make sure you share this so that it gets to more people, because this is such an important topic. Even if people aren't aren't divorced, they are married, is what I meant to say, that the conflicts and things that we're talking about even apply if you're in a marriage where you're finding it difficult with your spouse, that children do tend to become that collateral damage in the middle, and that because we're so emotional and wrapped up in what's going on for us, we can often not see that until it's too late, until their behavior starts telling us that something's going on for them. So rather than wait for that to happen and then be doing damage control, isn't it better, that we're actually proactive and understanding this and doing our best to prevent happening in the first place, and learning what we can do to help our children and support them. So that kind of leads me, because we've sort of been talking about how, it feels like we need to justify, there's almost like, sometimes this panicked feeling comes over you when you hear what's been said about you, how you've been badmouthed or put down or manipulated or whatever is going on. It almost feels like it's impossible to allow that and not say something about it, isn't it? It's like it's really, there's so much going on emotionally for us in that moment. Wouldn't you say, Risa, that that's probably one of the biggest problems for us, seeing clearly how we can move forward from that without saying something, without fixing it, without justifying it, without our kids believing it?
Yeah. That's so true, because it really feels like you're stuck. You're stuck in this nightmare where, you can't, you can't say anything to your children, or you don't want to, because then you're dragging them further into the mess. And sometimes even depending on how serious of it, if it can be let go or not, saying something to the ex sometimes also puts a backlash onto the children. And then they deal with more hurt for talking about it, or for confiding, in you as the other parent, and you're just trying to protect the children. And sometimes you have to set a really strong limit, or a strong, a firm boundary. And there's ways to protect yourself and take care of yourself, so your emotions are not spilling all over the place on top of your kids and, in other areas of your life. And when it becomes really foggy or scary, and you feel really stuck, like it's all his fault that, you're in this mess, and you don't see the light going forward. You can't see, how am I going to get unstuck, and how am I going to move forward to resolve this or overcome this and be able to have a new normal with my kids, or a good relationship with my kids in our own family. And that's why I think it's so important to be able to have the support to gain clarity, to be able to see clearly and get out and from being unstuck. And I know, working with a divorce coach, working with a parenting coach, which was you, was really able to help me in those areas, take care of my mental health, take care of my well-being. And sometimes we're stuck, and having the right support can help us get unstuck, because it's like we can't see. It's like the side view mirror, right? We have a blind spot, and we can't always see where we're stuck because we're emotionally attached to it. We're in it. We're in the mess, and we can't see. So having a neutral space, a safe space to be able to clear that fog, if you will, is so helpful in making the right decision. And showing up in the way you really want to show up in these relationships, rather than just reacting from what you're feeling subconsciously and then regretting it later and causing that collateral damage that you're talking about. And that's why.
Yeah. So I was just going to say that you have a really powerful story that's a great example of that. And, you already mentioned that, we talk about these sorts of things because, you've been with me since the beginning of peaceful parenting, being born, alhamdulillah. But I remember you telling me about this particular situation with your daughter where she was absolutely freaking out because she didn't want to go to her dad's. Now, the normal reaction that we might have is something bad must be happening there, or I better really worry about this because my child wouldn't react like this unless there was something really bad about dad's house. So I better think about not sending her. And so this would be how we would in the past have thought with that kind of reaction from your daughter. I would love for you to share with the viewers, just how possible it is to actually get out of the fog and actually see clearly what's going on for your child, and explain what you did, how that unfolded, and then what the result was with your daughter, because it's such a powerful story about how you don't need to buy into all of that, and that when you get out of the fog, you can actually see the reality of what's going on and really be a powerful ally to your child through the difficulty of transitioning between homes.
Yeah, this has happened a few weeks ago, and so she was talking to her dad, and he expects her to call her every day. And she's 8 years old, so sometimes she forgets, and when he calls, sometimes she answers, sometimes she doesn't, because she's living her life doing what 8-year-olds do. And it's nothing personal. She loves her dad, and they have a good relationship. And so she was talking to her dad, and he was asking, well, how come you haven't been calling me? How come I haven't heard from you? And so she was feeling some pressure, like, maybe I'm in trouble, or she kind of panicked, so she froze. And so she decided not to answer her dad, and just, they kind of ended that conversation. And so after she had that conversation, she came and told me about it, how, she thinks her dad is mad at her, and for not calling him regularly, or when he had expected. He had these expectations, and she wasn't able to meet them. So she was feeling, she was doing what we all do when we are going through some difficult communication. She was avoiding the situation. She was procrastinating, and she didn't want to face it. So the best thing for her was, okay, well, I'm not going to go to my dad's house. I'll stay here with you, or I'll stay at this person's house or that person's house, anything to get out of going. And throughout the week, it just ended up into ended up into defiance. Like, no matter what, I'm not going. And she got really stubborn and defiant that I'm not going to school if I have to go. She wanted to make sure that she did not have to face this. And, from what I've learned, I allowed her that space for validation, to hear her feelings out, to listen to her. And I had suggested, okay, well, why don't you talk to your dad and see, and tell him how you really feel. And she didn't want to. She didn't feel comfortable enough, to do that. And she's asked me to do it. And so when I said, okay, I will help you, I'm not going to leave you alone with this. We'll work through this together. But I am not, and I cannot talk to your dad. I cannot be the one to tell him, because our children know that that there's a lot of conflict between us. So, and I just reminded her, I said, I don't think it'll be a good idea for me to tell him, because your dad doesn't really like it when I get involved between you and his relationship. So you have to be the one who has to tell him, because it's coming from you. I think it'll cause more problems if I tell him. So she got it. They're so intuitive that they know, and she understood, and she left it there. And so one day after school, we were just kind of hanging out on the couch together. This was like a day before she had to go to her dad's house, and she was just kind of that whiny, when they get whiny and just kind of can be really annoying to us. She wouldn't stop at whining, and she was like, she wanted to just make sure she didn't have to go, because she didn't want to face this, how she was going to respond in this situation. Because I thought maybe if she at least approaches her dad before she goes there, it'll be easier to face him. So when she started like really thrashing about, throwing, fits and temper tantrums, I recognized that, wait a minute, she needs connection. She's totally off track. She is having big feelings, and that's why her behavior is displaying that. So she needs connection. So what we did was that, what she usually likes to do, and we have a time together where we really just bond and have our connection time together. And so I said, okay, why don't you want to go and take a bubble bath together? Because she loves to do that. So we did. And I just was with her. I didn't tell her anything. I didn't give her any advice. I didn't direct her. I just was with her, and we had a great time. And then after we were done, she was doing her homework, and it was like magic. It was like she was back on track. She was doing her homework willingly. And she said, you know what I could do? I could write a letter to dad. And I said, yeah, it's a great idea. So giving her, understanding what she needed, and then me being in a place to be able to give her what she needed, allowed her to come to a solution herself, because they're totally capable of doing that. But sometimes, and I recognized, and she later on did too, that I didn't have to tell her what to do. I didn't have to force her what to do. She automatically knew what the right thing was to do when she felt safe and secure and comfortable through connection. So, she knew exactly what to say. She kind of asked me, and I said, just speak your truth. Just say what is in your heart, and let it come out. The only thing that I helped her was to add in there to her dad that I'm doing the best I can in terms of her being able to communicate with him the way he wants her to, or expects her to. So she went to her dad's, and then she felt good about going. She didn't have this weight and this pressure hanging over her. She went to her dad's house. She gave him the letter right away. They had a good conversation about it, and she felt so much lighter. She enjoyed her time there. She really wanted to go because she loves her dad and wanted to spend time with him, but this was getting in the way. So many great things happened from this. Not only did she enjoy her time, she was able to communicate effectively with her dad. She was able to use her voice. And as a parent, we can empower our children to be able to use their own voice, to speak their own truth, because that's what we want for them as adults. Even though sometimes we think we want to tell them what to do, how they should be, that's not the case. In order to train them and to help prepare them for the real world and them being their authentic, true, confident self, we want to empower them to use their voice. They know what they need. They know what they want. And we want to help them feel confident to do it. So she was able to communicate with him effectively. She wasn't nervous or she wasn't scared. She didn't hold herself back. She was able to also navigate through a male-female relationship, which we, globally, whether we're Muslim or not, we endure a lot of sexism and all those oppressive, subconsciously or even unintentionally oppressive things that we as women face to be able to hold our own in a male-female relationships. And it helped my relationship with her. She felt like she could come to me, trust me. I had her back, but I wasn't going to push her or force her in a direction that I thought she should go. I allowed her to see that she could navigate herself by giving her the safety and the security she needed through connection. And, it's really made a big difference in our relationship, knowing that I know that I intuitively can parent her, and she knows that she can come to me with safety with anything that comes up. So alhamdulillah, that's what, that little thing. And before I would have been like angry at him. I would have said, oh my God, look at him. He's trying to manipulate her. He's putting so much pressure on her. He's doing this, this, and this. And I would have bashed him in my mind. And then I would have brought that energy to her and put her more in the middle and hurt her. Or I would have went into battle with him, and that would have not been helpful. It would have made a mess, and it would not have helped her.
And I hope that those who are listening can see that had you taken any of those paths, you would have disempowered her and not helped her learn how to stand up as a woman to communicate to an important man in her life what it was that she needed. But because you were able to be in that calm space and really look at the situation objectively rather than from your own emotional standpoint, that you were able to guide her through a process of being empowered in her relationship with her father. Now, from what we understand, these childhood experiences are so important. Can you imagine the difference it's going to make for her when she's married, in her being able to talk to her husband and say, look, this is what I need, or I'm trying my best, instead of, the dysfunctional conversations and communication that we tend to have going on because we haven't
passive aggressive or just avoidance that cause more explosions later on, right?
Exactly. So it is so possible to do this. And what I'm really excited about is how you've put together a workshop, which is pretty much the first step for any sister out there who is wanting to take this journey in being able to do what you've just shared with us. And that is really parent from a place where it's empowering our children in a co-parenting situation, even if the other parent isn't on board with it. And certainly your ex is not really on board with anything.
Co-parenting.
Anything. I mean, it's his way or the highway, generally speaking. But you've learned to navigate that really well and support your children and empower them through that journey. Not always easy. It's often quite challenging. But the first point is you being in that space, out of that fog, which is exactly why you've put this workshop together. So I'd love for you to share with everybody what this workshop is about.
Yeah, this, like you said, it's called Getting Through the Fog. And it's really about gaining clarity and confidence in where you're going. When we're emotionally, just reacting with our emotions and we're feeling stressed out or overwhelmed, it's so hard to see the path forward. It's hard to see any light at the end of the tunnel. And so we're going to be spending this time together to create a crystal clear vision of the type of life that you want to have for yourself and for your children. And having clarity in the direction that you're going to gives you the inspiration and the hope to have the courage that you already have inside to go in the direction that you want, to steer and to navigate this life in the direction that you want. And you know what? Also through this process, we're also going to be uncovering any barriers or challenges that can get in the way. And we're going to be talking about how we are self-sabotaging ourselves. And we can't see that sometimes. So all these things are going to be uncovered and unearthed in any way that we are self-sabotaging ourselves into going the direction that we want. And it'll also allow you to see how you can be in a space where you're emotionally healthy and really come out revitalized, re-energized, and inspired to have clarity to go ahead in the type of life that you want for yourself and for your children, and empower you to navigate all the challenges that divorce brings up, including co-parenting. Because, going through a divorce, you think like, okay, if I'm no longer married, I'm not going to be dealing with these things. But life is never free of challenges, whether, you're married or not married. And it's kind of like someone once told me, you're trading in one set of challenges for another set. So there's always going to be, like, when you have children, especially, you're going to have to figure out a way to raise these children, because you're always going to be connected in that regard. And, our emotions can get in the way of that. So this will really inspire you, give you hope, and let you see the way forward, part that fog.
So I've put the link, it's just above your head on the screen. You won't be able to see it, but they can. So it's bit.ly, get through the fog. So,
yep.
Yes, it is not a free workshop, but just remember the investment you are making in yourself and your children by joining this, it really is, if you don't get this part of the puzzle right, you can't do any of the other things that we've been talking about today. Because if you're in the fog, if you can't see your way, then you're not going to be able to have the clarity or the intuition or that connection with Allah, that trust in Allah that you need to do what Raisa did in that situation with her daughter. I mean, it's such a powerful story about how you can take yourself out of the picture and support your child through a difficulty and a challenge they're having with the other parent, without getting involved emotionally. And that's only possible when we understand where we're at ourselves personally. And this workshop is all about discovering what's going on for you so that you can get through the fog. That's why it's called Get Through the Fog. And incidentally, I love the word fog for this because it is like we're in a fog. But one of the things that is really interesting is using the word fog as an acronym, because it tends to be fear, obligation, and guilt, which are the key feelings that are getting in the way. F for fear, O of obligation, G for guilt. So,
yeah,
fog is a beautiful word. It's a play on words. It feel that like if you're driving in the fog, there's this uncertainty when you're driving. Like, when is there going to be a car in front? Is a car going to come from behind? I can't overtake. It's really hard to navigate in the fog when you're driving, right? So
it causes panic and anxiety, all those things that we deal with.
That's right. So navigating, parenting our children in that fog, it's no different. It brings about anxiety, stress, frustration, all of those feelings as well. And then, to look at it in terms of fear, obligation, and guilt, and realize that underneath most of what's going on for us are those three things. The fear is very powerful. The fear of my child is more connected to the other parent, or my child, maybe my child doesn't love me as much, or I'm having problems with my child. So all that fear, obligation, we get confused in our obligations because maybe there's people telling us, putting a pressure upon us of what we should and shouldn't be doing. And we can't see clearly what our true obligation is, which is primarily to Allah first and foremost. And the guilt, mummy guilt is so painful. The guilt, maybe I shouldn't have got divorced because now I'm putting my children through this. So those are the biggest factors that drive us insane. And seriously, it is a kind of insanity, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, I think we always feel that guilt, that mommy guilt at some level or another. But, I'm so emboldened about doing this because when I was going through my divorce, it was like devastation. And alhamdulillah, because I made so much dua for Allah to send me what I need to get through this in a good way, that, I was able to work with a divorce coach. She wasn't Muslim, but she helped me. And I was able to work with you as a parenting coach, and all the things that I've learned about myself and self-awareness, and the tools and the tips on how to navigate forward to create more of a beautiful, purposeful life for yourself, even after divorce. There's nothing that says that you can't, and you can offer that to your children as well. And one of the biggest things that you said is that if you are not in a good place, your children will not. They are going to reflect, because you're going to be modeling your inner well-being for them. So we have to take charge of our life, and we can do that. And an investment in that is more about what is the value versus a cost. Things cost something, but a value is what kind of value is going to add to your life. How can it impact your life? How can it change? And how can it make your life better?
Share with everyone what the investment is.
Yeah. So the investment is for $47 for a 3-hour online workshop, which is a bargain. And,
seriously, anybody who is serious about being able to achieve what you have achieved, I mean, that is a really small investment. I know there are a lot of single mums out there that, yes, I'm sure it's a stretch to manage that. But when it comes to investing in our children, what is more important? And I know you've been one to always invest in yourself in order to be there for your children, and I've done the same thing. The whole reason I was so inspired to set up the Peaceful Parenting Academy was because of how peaceful parenting was the solution for me and my children after having been through so much abuse, and the healing that we needed as a family. And that's why you were attracted to it, because your family was going through that. And it's why you're so passionate about doing this work, because you can see how possible it is to help our children be empowered despite all the challenges they're going through with parents being divorced. And, seriously, an investment of $47 to really get clarity on how you can do that and what might be getting in the way of you being able to do that. It is worth whatever stretch you have to make, to make that investment. Those 3 hours, even if you can't afford, more than that, is going to bring you the sort of clarity, get you out of the fog so that you can see your way in the right direction, insha'Allah.
Yeah, insha'Allah. And there's not just that, I have a couple of bonuses I'm offering as well. Time with me, 30-minute time with me to be able to talk about and really go through what are the challenges that you're facing, after things get unearthed from that workshop, whatever challenges come up for you personally, we can sit down and we can hash those out. And then I also, if you join this workshop, you also get to have a 10% off of my program later on that's coming out, is Reinventing Your Life After Divorce. And there's no obligation, but that's another extra bonus if you want to continue on your journey with me.
Well, that's fantastic. So the workshop might reveal for them where they're getting stuck, and so then they have that opportunity to spend some time with you where you can help them get unstuck from whatever that is, because we all get stuck
Yep.
sometimes. And you and I, in our journeys, we've had people who have been there for us and helped us out of the fog and pointed us in the right direction and helped us get the clarity that we needed. And so now you're offering that to other sisters. So Jazakallah khair for doing that and for really being passionate about this particular topic, because our kids our kids need it. You know, they're struggling, and unless we stop struggling, they're not going to stop struggling, are they? So
Yeah, no, absolutely. Wa iyyakum. And, I find it, my whole journey after divorce was really, part of it was cultivating my relationship with Allah and rediscovering that. And I believe also wholeheartedly, like, we have been given an amana and a responsibility. Okay, we're going through a divorce, but, we have to be able to, we're responsible to tie our camel and put our trust in Allah. If we just sit here and make dua and don't take the action, nothing will happen, because Allah does not change a situation for people unless they change what's within themselves. So, those things, I know that it's hard and it's difficult, and the first step is always hard, but there's so much hope and there's so much difference that can happen in your life that I feel like, because we're given that responsibility, what are we going to do with that responsibility? Our children are going through this. How can we help them? How can we support them? And that's our responsibility to do that.
So before we go, last call to action, bit.ly, get through the fog and go and check it out. Rais has done a beautiful page there for you, so you can check out what's involved. Really see if you can make the investment in yourself and your children to get that clarity and get out of the fog, so that you can parent your children powerfully, just as Raisa has done with hers, alhamdulillah. So Jazakallah khair, Raisa. It's been a very valuable conversation. I hope the sisters who have joined us have really benefited and have a deeper understanding of what's possible and what they need to do to be able to make that possible in their lives too, inshallah. So Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam to Allah barakatuh. Wa iyyakum. My pleasure, my honor, and I can't wait to see you on the workshop, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum salam.